This video is intended to describe a stationary light-tech mainframe named Leela, which translates to divine play. This is a rather dynamic stationary unit which will take, of course, a very long while to give a proper full thorough dissertation. Joining me today with that quest would be my whimsical stick figure chakra map, which has been obviously well utilized, but is here for visual reference of various chakra simulations, as well as this fantastic book by the wonderful Stephen A. Ross, The Wonderful Wizard of Sedona, which will describe more about the coins installed here, as well as this incandescent light bulb. And as a preliminary, I was going to do a nice little overview before I get into the individualities of each crystal, which makes up the organs of this crystalline entity apparatus. So, at a quick glance, this entire apparatus has been installed and built around a pyramidal Himalayan salt candle for a very distinct purpose. So salt lamps by themselves are very fantastic for purifying negativity into positivity, thereby being a very effective form of transmutation. So the aspect of having the, most importantly, incandescent classic bulb to actually heat up the salt is what's critical for the intended functionality of this entire platform, to ensure the entire crystalline apparatus is at peak efficiency, purified from the heated salt to indeed fulfill its function as a rather dynamic, ambitious stationary mainframe for a house. And so an aspect that's quite critical before I even discuss anything involving this composition would be the aspect of taking this alligator clip seen right here, which is grounded into the primary wire clipped upon there of the entire apparatus, and most importantly is piloting the energy seen through this cord straight into the outlet like so, which is quite essential for the intended function's optimal performance. By successfully taking this entire overture of this energy of this device and successfully grounding it into a house ground, which if indeed the building is up to code, all these outlets are conjoined together throughout the entire space, and also grounded and tied into a copper rod driven into the earth somewhere on the premise, developed to bypass the force of lightning or any other electrical malfunctions. So that's a modern aspect of electrical engineering that is being well harnessed here for this exact purpose, to quite simply generate a consistent, stable, tangible containment field for any space, place this guy is live in, such as hotels, residential houses, industrial centers, event centers. That's exactly the preface of what is indeed very important to notarize before the exotic crystalline composition is well dove into, which will be a very intensive dissertation. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about here. So that's the aspect I wanted, of course, convey as a good practical preliminary preface, is that this entire exotic range is developed to be grounded into the space. Like I mentioned, this is quite critical, hence I'm repeating myself, to tangibly pilot the entirety of the energy through all of the outlets going into the copper ground to also effectively ground this into the earth plane, like I mentioned, with electrical engineering of a copper rod driven into the premise. So it's a very, very advantageous part of the dissertation that I really wanted well notarized before I continued on. And so further aspects of just a basic preliminary before I dive into the individuals is the aspects of these node power packs right here are nodal points of heavy crystalline concentration of earth, fire, water, and wind, the four terrestrial elements. And the conjoining features would be that of the transmutation ratio, which I'll describe in a little bit, but basically works as a very powerful grounding scaffolding to, of course, take the entire crystalline group and give it a very strong, firm grounding to enhance the tangibility and grounding of this energy into the earth to make it real. And another conjoining feature of the four elements that pass through would be the love-shine ratio, which is a very heavy concentration pink-gray crystalline composition, to be the conjoining feature to have all the elemental spectrums in conjunction as they're igniting through their system, to have the common denominator being love conjoining all of the four terrestrial elements. So that's kind of the little overview that was pretty important to say before I get into each of these power packs, which as a disclaimer will be rather excessive. And the aspect too, at the very apex of the pyramid would be the love currencies, highly augmented on both sides of the coin, seen right here, which would be easier to illustrate with this book of both sides of this coin say a beautiful heart, an open mind, and a humble spirit. And the other coin says, with love, in love, and through love, which I've had the great privilege and honor of doing many augmentations of this coin in such configurations that are quite literally in distribution across the globe. Very, very beautiful fun fact, which is developing quite the significant morphic field of energy around this particular coin, making it a modern, potent, magical sigil. So that's been a lot of fun. And so obviously why that's important to be mentioned here is that this is another dramatic foray in the loving expansion of the potency of this modern sigil that has been this coin's augmentation on both sides of the apex of the pyramid. And then right here would be another specialized band, which would be considered the Terra Nueva frequency or New Earth portal, which is a little bit of a more deviation for the purpose of this construct, but I want to at least give an overview of the prominent sections before I dive into each of them, which will, like I said thrice, be quite the endeavor. And before I even do that as well, I'll discuss the functionality of these alligator clips hardwired to the primary wire of this entire device, which works as a way to, of course, directly ground into compatible devices such as light blade wands, for example. To be able to ground this into the primary wire here makes a very nice grounding of energy to synchronize with the mainframe, so the purification and very balanced dynamic frequency pitch is in containment with this guy running through its circuitry, as well as being purified through the entirety, and as well as, of course, harmonizing the individual personalities of these various constructs with the central mainframe, and perhaps most importantly, with the auxiliary charging peak efficiency is also the aspect of successfully taking the collective and rounding into Earth to ensure comfortability, tangibility, and efficiency. That's the most important prerogative of this entire endeavor, I would dare say. So that'd be that so far. And I already mentioned the aspect of the importance of it being incandescent to generate heat opposed to LED. LED may look nice if it illuminates the structure, but the heat is what indeed generates the consistent purification that makes it a consistent wavelength and not a temporal fluctuation. What I'm trying to say there is the aspect of a consistently charged apparatus grounded to a space will be a very consistent field of energy that's not distorting or having wavelengths such as I'll go ahead and stop my digression there and mitigate my Christianese as much as possible to maintain coherence and competence and relevancy. I beg everybody's pardon, as a little whimsical joke. Anyhow, now it's time to get into it. So facing me right now would be the Earth Node Power Pack of the concentration. This is where I will go ahead and get into the intensive crystalline composition and notarize each of the organs of this crystalline entity starting now. So the blade band itself, right here, is various crystals in ignition sequence that be considered the Earth elemental frequency. Starting off with clear quartz seen right here that works as the neutral accelerant program carrier of the entire sequence of ignition in this crystalline blade band, which is very nice to have neutral resonance amplification, which also, of course, the clear quartz could be denoted to putting one in touch with being consciousness assisted technology of being able to ambiently amplify the intentions of the recipient. Obviously, that's the whole aspect too of being consciousness assisted technology of antiquity reverse engineered in this timeline. So right here, starting off in the earth band, would be red jasper, the quintessential root chakra stabilizer in the mineral kingdom that is quite well utilized in my life's work for distinct foundational scaffolding stability, which is very, very nice. Then each of these power packs have this in common as a common denominator of having the golden healer quartz seen right here, which is the quintessential gold white light source attunement, diffused through the 4 spectrums, actually 5 spectrums of the elements, is quite critical. And why that's, of course, very, very advantageous, it's pretty self-evident, but I'll take the time to explain it, is having a clean gold white light source high heart attunement to the heart of the central sun of creation is very advantageous. And so having that particular source alignment through the earth spectrum, of course, diffuses the earth frequency compatibility in resonance with the auric field of the earth centers. That's why that's worth talking about. So that'd be the golden healer quartz in ignition sequence. as well as ruby, a very classic red ray crystal of antiquity and deification that's quite prolifically praised throughout human history as a quintessential intensive root chakra stimulant of a corundum family. What that means, there's titanium in the structure there, which also works as the most dense, atomical, powerful red ray 9 out of 10 hardness, which is the quintessential root chakra stimulant. Then clear quartz right here, going into another classic red ray stone of antiquity of garnet. Garnet, aldemine garnet particularly, just like ruby, is a classic red ray root chakra activator of antiquity that's well praised. So when you combine the aspects of the most stable and the two nice stimulators of the root chakra, that indeed encourages a very stimulated, but most importantly, a stabilized root chakra as a foundational scaffolding point. Hence, the blade band's been exclusively concentrated with those three various red ray crystals in tandem with the clear quartz and the golden healer quartz source alignment, which is quite essential. That puts the source in sorcery. So it goes on like so, igniting until it completes its sequence and ties back in, then gets grounded into the transmutation scaffolding, which will be more relevant at the very end to be a very comprehensive capstone contingency. So the aspect of right there will be the Earth Blade Band. Now I'll be discussing this part first, which I usually save for last in most description videos because it's good to get that out of the way and for foundational context. So the core of these devices that are very well buried by many crystalline components I'll be discussing right now. The central wooden core of this entire device would be that of sycamore from Sedona, Arizona. Not just any sycamore, but particularly a very lovely, healthy, abundant sacred one-legged that always has its root tendrils grounded into Oak Creek, which means the tree itself is a very abundant tree who never goes without, since it always has a water source it's always drawing from. Which is a very, very nice, fun fact that's relevant to discuss is, of course, and why that's important too, is that with the carbon-based consciousness, kind of like you can think of an analogy of a fingernail from a being, the donor tree is a very abundant carbon-based entity that works very nice in tandem with the intensive silica concentration to bring the further heaven-to-earth compatibility to encourage the earth grounded bandwidth to the atomical structure of carbon to indeed increase the tangibility of the overture of this device. And so all four of these power packs have that in common of exactly from the same branch from a very, very healthy, lucky, blessed sycamore tree in Sedona, Arizona. That's always grounded through the waterway of Oak Creek 24/7. Then also affixed to the the sycamore core would also be two bolts of white selenite seen on both sides, hewn exactly to shape. So selenite by itself is a very fantastic 6, 7, 8 non-physical chakra activator that works very diligently to clear off debris impeding one's conscious self and their higher self, which is already ridiculously advantageous for the spiritual adept. To have an unfiltered channel between their guidance and their conscious self is perhaps selenite's greatest gift. And also with that high frequency induction, it works to purify, burn off with that divine connection point, any staying energies from top to bottom. But where it truly shines at any given spirit tool is exactly this critical feature. So even for this power pack, for analogy's sake, it can take this entire closed loop crystalline continuity or collective. It can work to purify this entire group of crystals. It can work to amplify this entire group of crystals, but perhaps most importantly, it works to harmonize and bring equilibrium to the entire crystalline group. And why that's triply important is that each of these individual concentration node points of the four elemental spectrums have this exact feature in common to ensure the amplification, the purification, and the harmonization of each individual node before it runs its entirety of its ignition sequence. Completes its circuit, if you would. That's why that's quite critical to discuss for efficiency's sake, and just, further making the magic real. Quite simply, in a very comfortable, blessed, divine fashion is the prerogative there. And affixed to all of those guys, next to the selenite would be the four spectrums of kyanite. So kyanite is perhaps the most rapid transfer energy in the mineral kingdom, hence I'm using my penmanship whimsically fast to do my best to illustrate its effective transferability ratios. So the aspect of black kyanite seen right here is the most rapid grounder of energy into the earth plane absolute quick as possible, which is a very good contingency and surge protector to ensure the contact path to the energy is buffering very quickly to disperse and recirculate with the earth very quickly, which also works like another layer of etheric Teflon that's highly discouraging for internal external negativity to maintain in the field by itself. Not to mention there's a million different contingencies layered on top of that do the same function, but that's the point of black kyanite being the most rapid transfer capacity in the mineral kingdom for this exact designation. Also, of course, with that rapid transference in the earth, that increases the vibratory threshold to indeed ground into tangibility to, once again, make the magic real. And then orange kyanite right here is a very fantastic sacrum stimulant to the highest degree to increase one's imagination and creativity, basically back to their divine blueprint before imprintations, ego, my identity, complications occur, which is the human condition. We all go through it. Not a big deal. Then green kyanite right here is a very fantastic heart chakra bridger that works very diligently to clear past patterns of division that would be very non-conducive for unified field consciousness, as well as, of course, transference of energy between two different parties, such as having a conversation, those things like that. And also, the blue kyanite works very diligently to, of course, stimulate the third eye to mitigate cross-interference between the left and right hemispheres, aka the awakened third eye, whole brain thinking, which is very nice. So obviously the four, with their individual ratios of specific transference based on the color spectrum, work very synergistically together to be the most rapid transfers of energy in the mineral kingdom, which, like I mentioned, works as a very significant layer of etheric Teflon that's always working very diligently to buffer and reroute any stagnancy from top to bottom that be causing maladies within the self or with those in service to, basically, quite simply. So that's the aspect that makes the kyanites rather critical for the actual transference of the ratios as a very, very another further way to make the magic real through authentic vibrational transference. So that'd be the common denominator between all four of these power packs. Besides that, though, they're all very individually and uniquely built out based on adherence to the elemental crystalline spectrums of earth, fire, water, and wind once again. But like I said, that's the common denominator of the sycamore core, the selenite hewn to it, as well as the four spectrums of kyanite. For all four have this exact in common of earth, fire, and water and wind with that foundational platform. Okay, so without further ado, I'll get back into the concentration of the earth power pack. So this right here is a very special and critical feature named celestial smoky quartz. So smoky quartz, famously, like seen right here, is a fantastic grounder of negativity into positivity by effectively composting excess energy through the root chakra into the earth stars for reprocessing. But where this particular specimen truly shines is based on its very exotic growth structure, which is very, very meta and sci-fi to discuss in a coherent, linear fashion, but I'll do my best to make it comprehensible. Okay. So the aspect of the celestial growth structure is quite critical for its capacity to work as a dimmer switch auto-regulator for each individual auric field that comes in contact with this. And what I'm trying to say there in normal speak would be the aspect of this entire crystal is going through the entire composition to work to calibrate in real time for each individual auric field in contact, as well as obviously the prime recipient, as well as anyone in interaction with. It works very diligently to auto-regulate and bring comfortability and perfect calibration balance to whoever comes in contact with this frequency in real time. And what I'm trying to say there too, it meets people where they're at in the most comfortable, efficient, ingestible vibration that's not too loud, not too quiet, but just right every time. That's why this particular crystal is a little challenging to describe in a very rational manner, but its effective purpose is beyond important in my life's work for effective, efficient, stable, comfortable magic, quite simply. And so, on that note, each of these individual crystals I'll be mentioning now have all, of course, been terminated and wire wrapped to a primary wire of copper, brass, and silver seen throughout here, which is a common denominator ground for each of these components. So essentially, each of these crystals I mentioned now are all part of a crystalline collective of organs of this crystalline entity that all work synergistically together for vibrational compound interest. So that's why, of course, that's worth discussing, is that now that I'll be getting into the individual crystals that make up the composition of each elemental spectrum power pack, that's why that's rather critical to discuss, is that when I discuss one thing, of course, it's going to be part of an entire sequence that is making up an entire collective. Okay, enough of that. So right here is another big dose of ruby, the quintessential root chakra, red ray, stone of antiquity of earth, like I mentioned in the blade band, hence I did a double concentration. And so that's why that's there. It's a very, very fantastic zest for life frequency. Then in tandem with another blade band configuration would be the red jasper, once again a larger specimen, to once again fortify the stability of the root chakra, which is of the absolute essence for the intended goal of this very soothing dynamic mainframe, which of course will make sense as I continue on. Then right here is ruby with zoisite, which is actually a natural synergization of two minerals of, once again, ruby, like mentioned over here, with zoisite, a lovely green ray crystal that is perhaps one of the most impeccable heart-mind coherence stimulants. It's actually also known as cousin to tanzanite, which will eventually be discussed way in the future on wind, because I'll be doing it from ascending order from the ground up. But the aspect of the zoisite with the ruby makes for impeccable heart-mind coherence engagement, a very nice stimulant for that purpose. But the ruby ingrained in there also makes for a very nice root chakra stimulation to encourage the full zest for life, enthusiastic heart-mind coherence stimulation made manifest, which is very nice. Then right here is a black tektite, which is a product of nuclear meteorite impacting sand through a celestial impact into the earth. And why that's also important too is the aspect of this stone coming from the heavens is essentially another black ray heaven to earth frequency. So that's a quite essential frequency I utilize quite often because it's a very powerful high frequency raiser, but luckily it's a black ray foundational feet up raising of vibration, which is a very nice way to tangibly raise the vibratory field of the auric template. But like I mentioned thrice, very important is it does it from the ground up, so it's not a massive third activator, but it actually, of course, activates the entire chakra column as a true master light body stimulant, but raises vibrations from the ground up, which is very advantageous. Then right here is a lovely specimen of Sedona red rock from the apex of Bell Rock, specifically. And this, of course, wonderful stone comes from Sedona, Arizona, which is a very special place that has a very high iron concentration. Hence, all the crystals there, or the rocks found in the area, have oxidized as red to be a very heavy iron concentration, which encourages dramatically the efficiency of magic becoming real. Then, right here, the very apex of this power pack would be the shungite. Shungite is a very, very in vogue crystal right now for black ray carbon filtration's sake, and is very acclaimed to mitigate the harmful wavelengths we contend with in modern humanity that are natural, such as 5G and various electromagnetic fields that could harm our subtle DNA. So a little dose of black shungite goes a very long way for a massive etheric purification filtration system through the entire apparatus. Of course, once again, all these crystals being discussed here will be grounded through the wall to generate a very tangible containment field through the entire space with all the outlets conjoined. I digress and clear my throat. Then right here would be Prophecy Stone, a very, very, very special, mysterious, beyond belief, sumo hematoid, which means it has aspects of high iron found in it. That is pretty cool. So the gentleman who discovered this stone had an unexpected massive prophetic vision, which led him to dub it Prophecy Stone. So Prophecy Stone actually is very fascinating for the fact that it, of course, has various metals found on our periodic table, but apparently, according to science, this particular mineral has metals found in it that are not from our periodic table, which means it legitimately has space metal. Very, very wild. And why that's relevant here is that with its high iron concentration, it makes for a very powerful grounding of energy, like a hematite, if you would, into the Earth stars to increase the tangible range of the high frequency emanation. Also, in tandem, has a very nice 6, 7, 8 non-physical chakra stimulation, yet the establishment of both the Earth stars and the Soul stars, just in this guy, are well established. And very appropriate to be in the conjunction and containment of the Earth spectrum to increase the tangibility and make the magic real once again, which I will say probably 50 times for this dissertation, because that's the whole point. And by golly, that would be just about the Earth Power Pack, but now I'll go a lot faster. I got the preliminaries out of the way. And one feature in common with all 4 power packs I'll mention right now would be that of fulgurite, seen right here and here. Fulgurite is petrified lightning, literally the lightning striking sand, which is a very effective shamanic tool of antiquity to raise vibrations and intentions. When a shamanically utilized wielder of magic, I should say, for the fulgurite, would resonate with the power of fulgurite, it was utilized to intensify the magic, the medicine, or the prayers of the healer, if you would, back in antiquity times, or the magical person, medicine woman, you name it. And the aspect of harnessing the power of lightning and resonating also worked dramatically with lightning force to activate the entire light body, hence it literally is the force of lightning being resonated with, and also would dramatically intensify one's magical intentions into full manifestation, as well as being a very nice energetic stimulant physically, and also, of course, like many various exotic crystalline compositions here, there's many contingencies to stabilize and ground and purify the overture so that's in a very comfortable optimum. I thought I'd get that out of the way, because of course we'll talk about the transmutation ratio probably next, actually, after I finish the fulgurite up. And so that's why fulgurite, of course, is a cardinal storm energy, which combines the aspects of earth, fire, water, and wind, the terrestrial 4 elements. And that's why they're a common denominator for the amplification and synergization of earth, fire, water, and wind. So next, I'll go ahead and discuss the transmutation ratio in the same earth vein right now, as a good way to get that out of the way as well, as a critical feature to discuss. So this entire lateral band of both hematite and smoky quartz is running on brass and silver for the intake-output ratios of the exact same vibratory sequence. And the aspect why that's critical is to be a very grounded stationary scaffolding that's a lateral band that conjoins all these frequencies as well. So why that's important is that the individual power packs, like I mentioned earlier, are all grounded to the transmutation ratio that runs a sequence through the entire ignition, what's of course illuminated. And this works as a common ground to further ground all this energy and purify it into the earth for reprocessing, which I'll get into right now. Hematite is a iron-based, most effective grounder of energy through the root chakra into the earth stars, into earth for reprocessing, in tandem with smoky quartz, providing the same energetic stimulation function to further purify and compost negativity by firmly grounding all excess energy into the earth for reprocessing. So the two together are deemed the transmutation ratio to encourage the rapid discharge of any stored internal external negativity. So once again, another layer of etheric Teflon to rapidly encourage the etheric dialysis at a very high ratio as quick as possible, and be the ultimate contingency to take all these exotic frequencies and make them real and comfortable and tangible. That's why that's always very important. And like I mentioned, oh my goodness. The aspect of all these power packs have been grounded to this guy for that distinct purpose, to make a comfortable grounding unit for all the exotic crystalline structures for making the magic real, which I said I'll say 50 more times because I can't repeat that enough in this whole prerogative. So that'd be earth, and that'd be the transmutation scaffolding mentioned finally. Next, I shall be switching to fire in ascending order from bottom to top. All right, gotta move my chair. Okay, so right here on the blade band, this would be carnelian. Carnelian's a classic orange ray stimulant that stimulates the lower 3 chakras of great praise and antiquity of Egyptian magic utilization, and quite simply a very nice sacrum stimulant that is very much a confidence enhancer as well as a lower 3 zest for life engager. Very nice. Then going to clear quartz to neutrally amplify once again into tiger's eye. Tiger's eye is an essential lower 3 chakra stimulant, yet it takes the aspect of dramatically aligning the solar plexus, the sacrum, and the root chakra in perfect alignment. So when you have the aspect of the carnelian being the great fiery stimulation of lower 3, then you take the alignment for the tiger's eye to take that excessive overture together and align the stimulation. It makes for a very powerful lower 3 combination, which I've really enjoyed the combination for over a decade now upon its discovery in this lifetime. So so these two in tandem work very fantastic for full lower three chakra stimulation of the solar plexus, sacrum, and the root chakra in tandem with the heavy root chakra concentration over here. And of course, in between the nodes, once again, will be the clear quartz to neutrally amplify this sequence. Going into golden healer quartz will be another gold white light high heart source attunement, which puts the source in sorcery once again, and completes this sequence like so. And so once again, the fulgurite already mentioned is the very bottom right here, and this right here will be fire agate, the most stabilized fire elemental spectrum in the mineral kingdom I can get my hands on, which most effectively stabilizes the root, the sacrum, and the solar plexus. That stuff is pretty amazing because it is the quintessential stabilization of the lower three chakras, which is very, very advantageous for the rather top-heavy adept, such as myself, for example, very like high concentration of stimulation up towards the higher chakras. This is a great contingency set in place right here in its most stable fashion possible. So that's why I love that stone quite a bit. To, of course, encourage the comfortable groundedness of being the in-the-body experience, quite simply. Which is a lot harder than you think it would be for the true adept. So right here, as a master healer, I employ quite religiously named Star Argonite, which I put in the fire spectrum. Since it's a calcium-based crystal, which puts it in the fire range, it's very appropriately fit right here with its collective brothers and sisters. So the aspect of right here, the Star Argonite, works as a full light body activator. It works very diligently to clear any patterns from top to bottom of any patterns of dis-ease predominantly. So that's one of those true triumphant master healers I employ quite religiously for this dynamic utilitarian feature. And so that makes for a very powerful clearing of any stagnant energy from top to bottom in a very deep way, as well as a very strong calcium-based way to raise vibrations of the skeletal structure, which is our base scaffolding, so you can have the light emanate from inward out, which is very advantageous. And while doing that, it purifies and dismantles any patterns that have been impeding one's factory blueprint. So it's a very, 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 very amazing full light body spectrum activator. Then right here will be another raw dose of golden healer quartz, which is a prominent theme throughout this entire construct seen in bead format, but a little raw, nice specimen right here goes a long way to increase that fire of creation, connectivity, alignment, attunement, if you would. Then right here will be sunstone, the quintessential feldspar-based solar plexus and sacrum stimulant of very sunny, fun energy, of enthusiasm, creativity, and feeling good, quite simply. And that is very much the happy dance stone right there, I would say. Then right here is malachite, which is paradoxically a green ray fire elemental copper-based crystal that is quite famous in Aztecian traditions, unfortunately, but it's a very powerful crystal of being a very powerful fire elemental third and fourth chakra stimulant that burns past stagnant energies that be impeding one's heart's will, which also works as another natural layer of psychic protection to insulate the field towards one's intentions. Quite simply, very helpful for leadership modalities, stepping into play and embracing one's destiny. Very nice. Like I said, green ray fire elemental copper-based crystal, very cool. Then right here is another metal-based crystal of pyrite, which is a very fiery yang machismo, I'm getting polarity to employ here. And why I'm joking about that is that pyrite has very particular solar plexus stimulation to direct and ground high-frequency energy into tangibility, so it's very effective in the aspects of practical theurgy, or quantum matter manipulation, or alteration, I should say. And so that's a very powerful, empowering frequency through the entire structure. Then right here will be Libyan gold tektite, another yellow ray fire energy of great notarization in the annals of history, as the powerful gold ray crystal utilized by the Magi god king of antiquity, the pharaohs. This crystal was carved into scarab to be set on their Magi god king breastplates, which were superconductors they'd wear as badge of their office. And the aspect of it being a fire energy is the most powerful, perhaps, stimulant of solar plexus and sacrum, the fire centers of the body, but most importantly, it's a gold ray of illumination that emanates the entire light body from top to bottom as a very potent, powerful dharmic accelerant, a very high yield capacity to increase one's true, authentic, divine-inspired dharmic alignment into manifestation, as well as, of course, augmenting one's manifestations in a way as well. It's one of those truly incredible, fantastic gold ray crystals I love desperately. Then at the very apex up here will be the calcite right here. That's white calcite, but it's been tumbled by the ocean, so I call it oceanic calcite. So white calcite is a fire energy that's underrated in Mineral Kingdom for metaphysical use, in my opinion, that works very diligently for the white ray spectrum to diffuse and segment energy from top to bottom. But the aspect that makes this truly remarkable is that this particular specimen I harvested myself actually was tumbled by the ocean for millennia, or eons, centuries. God literally knows. I'm not going to try to speculate on that. But the point is that the indelible mark of the clearing of the ocean has been well shaped in this crystal. Hence, it's there. And so that surprisingly would be the fire power pack very succinctly, very quickly. Now we're picking up serious pace that the preliminaries are out of the way. Next, I shall be switching to the water. Now I must unplug this auxiliary light blade wand to do so. And ground it back in there. And since I'm at it, so with this mainframe, there are actually 12 right here of these various clips seen right here, which could be used for many purposes, such as grounding into compatible technology, if you would, as well as many recipients at this point are getting rather exotic with their experimentations, for example, of getting copper charge plates with sacred geometric symbols embossed upon the plate itself to kind of plug in for illustrative purposes like so. Then they're actually putting their water and their food on that, for example, to give it a massive supercharge, or even essential oils, which they put on there to atomically accelerate the energy through the charge plate with the various placements of whatever artifacts they feel resonance to place on there. So I guess I discussed that functionality as well. That's why there are 12 of these guys on here that are being utilized from primary wire as well to be the most effective transfer of energy. And that's why they're all over the place, and I think that's good enough about that for now as I get back to water. Obviously, keeping this coherent and linear is a Herculean task. It takes a great amount of discipline. And so back to back on target. This is the water, okay? And starting off with, once again, clear quartz as a neutral accelerant of the blade band. By now that's pretty well established. But going into moss green agate, the most stabilized heart chakra stimulant in the Mineral Kingdom I can get my hands on, which most effectively stabilizes the heart chakra to a very, very efficient capacity, which of course is the governance of our physical and metaphysical circulation, not to mention also our quantum connection point. So having that guy stabilized is of the absolute essence, almost about chief, I'd say, for the spiritual adept to have that embodiment frequency. Hence, it's been really well incorporated through the entire construct, such as the lateral band at the apex, which I will discuss individually, but I want to give a nice overview, is that moss green agate is quite critical in its functionality of a very vast vibrational engineering endeavor to ensure the stability and equilibrium and the harmonization of the heart chakra in a very high ratio for the spiritual adept once again. Particularly in conjunction with golden healer quartz right here, which is the gold white light celestial attunement to source creation, which is pretty dramatic to say out loud because indeed that's what its function is. But the aspect of why that's critical too is that with the most terrestrial stabilization green ray heart chakra stimulant in conjunction with the most exotic celestial gold white light source creation, it essentially makes a new earth stabilized portal of source energy entering the physical domain, which is kind of a spoiler that this entire blade band is designed for that exact purpose, the very apex. But it's good to discuss that, at least get some headway on that concept as it gets fully into view. Anyhow, that was actually not too bad of a digression. It made sense and it was relevant. Like I said, golden healer quartz is of course the gold white light source attunement, then going into aquamarine, the quintessential blue ray cardinal water energy of the ocean from antiquity, which is a cousin to emerald in the beryl family, which means it has an 8.5 out of 10 the hardness scale, which makes it very obscenely effective 4th and 5th chakra stimulation based on its hardness and gentle soothing capacity for impeccable heart-speaking from the deepest heart speaking the truth. So that is a very, very amazing specimen. Like I mentioned, it's a cousin to emerald, which resonates very nicely, and they both are stones of antiquity of great precious notarization that have a very dense atomical structure, which means their particular crystalline ranges of color range effect on the auric field are very strong. And that's not including the aspect of the morphic field resonance of the belief in these stones of magic for millennia, further compounding the interest of effective stones of magic. So of course it's as drawing upon a great amount of belief and faith and praise of these particular crystals of antiquity, yada yada yada. Okay, so back on track. Clear quartz is a neutral subcapacitator going into emerald, the quintessential green ray heart chakra crystal of abundance that is very well deified and very well praised as the impeccable heart chakra stimulant to its ideal configuration. Hence, it's been a very chief component for the Abundance Crusade of 2025. To have that very impactful activated heart is very, 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 very advantageous no matter how you slice it. Then right here will be the Golden Healer Quartz to bring the source energy octave, then going back into moss green agate to further stabilize the heart chakra exaggeration pitch to bring comfortability to the entirety of the system of this blade band, and so on, completing a circuit. So once again, the fulgurite at the very bottom, and this lateral band right here is a special combination of what's called infinitite and rutilated quartz to further intensify this particular three infinitite sequence for a distinct purpose. Infinitite is a very special rare cousin to classic serpentine, which already makes for a very fantastic full community activator light body generator, but the aspect of infinitite has a association with archangelic forces, which is very, very nice. But the aspect of what makes it practical here for application's sake is it works very diligently to decrystallize patterns found from the root, raising to the heart and beyond, that be natural stagnations from habitual patterns of dis-ease, from formational blockages, if you would. So it works very diligently to also further insulate the auric field from any dysregulation. So what I'm trying to say there also, it makes for a great agent to ensure the auric field integrity is not frazzled by stray radio energies, which is very, very advantageous for the hypersensitive quantum choline canary, such as myself, and for the recipient. So that's a very, very nice feature right there, and I'll have to tell her a personal story about this crystal on my own time. That's very important to let her know about. Anyhow, so speaking of further stability, this would be blue lace agate right here, which is a water elemental, most stabilizing fifth chakra stimulant I can get my hands on, which is very advantageous, particularly for those in a teaching position such as the recipient. And that stabilizes the fifth chakra with water spectrum, very nice for communicative impeccabilities. Then once again, Larimar, a quintessential blue ray soothing stone of water and fire, paradoxically, that lovely enough. So I see the fifth, the sixth chakras in a very, very nice, soothing, oasis of calm, divine goddess format. So this stone actually has a lot of legend lore, which I should omit to consolidate time because it's already going to be a very long video. But long story short is that Edgar C. Casey predicted this particular crystal rising on the time when Lemuria Atlantis would return again, kind of thing. It's a whole long story, and this was found in 1982. And it's a very, very special, auspicious Blu-ray crystal of the New Age. And for practical application, very nice, soothing, calm oasis generator. Moving on. So Mike mentioned with serpentine, this entire square right here, or it looks like a diamond, if you would, based on its placement, is that of serpentine, which is a very classic full light body activator and serpentine Kundalini stimulant, which is very nice for cellular respiration, activation, and just general good vibrations for the body. Inside that would be a very special green ray crystal named Seraphinite. Seraphinite is a lovely green ray crystal named after the seraphim archangels that is perhaps, just like the star argonite, one of the absolute most effective full light body activators from top to bottom to rapidly, gently, with seraphic divine intervention, if you would, dismantle the patterns of dis-ease from bottom to top. So that's, of course, one of the most amazing crystals I utilize quite frequently for that utilitarian healing body purpose as well, for body, mind, spirit, and soul, for all the emotional bodies, for example. Seraphinite is where it's at. quite simply. Hence, it's one of the 3 master healers, which I will circle back to once I get over here, that work fantastic as a trinity to perform very, very amazing practical vibrational healing augmentations. Anyhow, so above that Seraphonite would be the infamous Moldavite. So Moldavite, as a preface, is quite the potent crystal of dharmic acceleration, to put it lightly. And Moldavite has gotten quite the rap from social media platforms for ruining people's lives, because indeed it is quite taxing on the false self matrix by itself in the raw. Because Moldavite's intensive, particular storm elemental green ray composition is that of a holy grail hurricane, as a little joke to put it funnily, and swiftly, dynamically dismantles and puts great strain on the false self matrix, which is the aspect of what divides one from their divine configuration. So it can have a quite volatile effect on one's false self matrix of the internal view of dividing from their creation capacity to, of course, in the best way, align you to your dharmic template alignment with creation, which is the big goal. So it definitely is a very powerful, legendary crystal that can be donated to the Holy Grail as well. But why I mentioned that is that, don't worry, there are many contingencies to stabilize the overture, to ground it out, and to bring love to the entire continuity, to mitigate the timeline whiplash through the entire aspect. So, of course, that's why a little dose of that synchronistic magic aligns one with their highest path in such an obvious way that mental gymnastics would be very hard to maintain when that much obvious divine evidence keeps surmounting upon their experience, basically. That's why Moldavite's pretty powerful legendary stuff that has yet to fail to disappoint through its sheer magical potency as an authentic, mysterious, magical space rock. Anyhow. So right here would be turquoise. Turquoise is a lovely classic favorite of millions for thousands of years for a good reason, and it actually is found in the ignition sequence up here as well to be a very fortifying 5th chakra stimulant from the aspects of combining the elements of earth, fire, and water and wind of the terrestrial 4 elements of a Lakota medicine wheel to encourage one's wholeness and truth in a stable way. So the aspect of turquoise also brings a nice pranic stimulation to the entire auric field. It is very soothing and very aligning to one's highest truth in a very impeccable way that's had great amount of praise for millennia for its beauty, of course. It's a very beautiful blue ray crystal, but also it has an aspect of wholeness that makes it a true ancient grandfather ally of great notarization. Then right here would be prehnite. Prehnite is a very fantastic 3rd and 4th chakra stimulant of both water and earth calibration resonance. And what makes prehnite truly special as a very powerful emotional healer is very much a stone of deliverance, you would say. And the aspect of the prehnite also makes a very clean attunement to the sphere of the green ray Clohan, Raphael the Archangel, is why it's such a good crystal to utilize under any circumstance. To have the direct clean attunement to the Raphael force is very advantageous. All right, moving on. So then right here would be chrysoprase, what I consider a criminally underrated green ray crystal of utilitarian purpose for a heart chakra activation altruism. Is a very fantastic 3rd and 4th chakra stimulant of water frequency, and is truly a very, very potent heart healer that is a very lovely wonder of the green ray mineral kingdom. So that would be that. That'd be water. Okay, now we're moving on to wind, and we're making fantastic progress at this point. It's all in the prep work sometimes. So, right here will be the wind power pack. Starting off with the clear quartz, seen right here be the neutral accelerating energy, going into the classic amethyst, a very lovely violet ray, 6th, 7th, 8th, non-physical chakra stimulant back to one's godhead, very classic stone of purple ray utilization. Then going to golden healer quartz once again for that gold white light source attunement. Then going into fluorite, seen right here. So fluorite is actually a very special, I consider another underrated crystal of wind frequency alignment. That is the impeccable coherence alignment attunement. What that means is that fluorite has a way of condensing and consolidating and bringing raw disparate energies that can be considered chaotic into coherent focus. So that's truly very advantageous for the aspect of the spiritual adept 2 that contends with many quantum fluctuations. Is impeccable coherence can be a hallmark of greatness, at least that's my living intention, if you would. And fluorite answers that job very well, with heavy concentration of the blade face to be the ultimate concentration of a coherent alignment of wind to bring the aspects of the third eye into coherent alignment between the left and right hemispheres. So the force of order that the mineral fluoride provides is very essential for equilibrium and impeccable serotonin levels. You name it, the brain chemistry capacities are all denoted to fluoride's impeccable structuring of energy into perfect order, which is quite the amazing thing to really notarize. For I do love this crystal quite desperately for its very, very amazing ally effects. Then going into clear quartz, into lapis lazuli. Just like carnelian, this is quite the praised crystal of ancient Egyptian magical utilization of antiquity. And so the aspect of lapis is kind of like the yin to the yang of the carnelian, at least in ancient application terms, of being the stone of Isis, of a lovely blue ray beauty of wind elemental 5th and 6th chakra stimulation. That of great praise and deification as well, to be a very, very lovely higher self, higher truth, sovereign enabler, to of course be able to access linear past lives and all the aspects of the astral muscle memory of magic, to be consciously aware, is the great gift of lapis lazuli, of one's true vast soul template made manifest and aligned with one's truth consciously, is very, very, very nice, to put it lightly. So then, of course, going on to golden healer quartz, then the amethyst, clear quartz, fluorite, golden healer quartz, lapis, and so on till it completes its sequence. Now to the blade facing, once again, fulgurite, petrified lightning. Then right here would be scolecite, the quintessential white ray stone of calming divinity I employ quite often, as a very fantastic 6th, 7th, 8th non-physical chakra stimulant that brings extreme soothing of the mental body to encourage one's divine witness self in the conscious self parameter, which is very, very, very soothing and calming to that capacity. Then right here, once again, is a fluorite moon, very, very nice. So it's a larger specimen of fluorite, like in the blade band, to further encourage the impeccable coherent perception of taking all chaotic energies into a stray radial focus and generate coherence. And the aspect of coherence is quite critical too, is that it takes all the energy, makes a nice condensing focus, which also increases discipline, which is very nice. And the aspect of the coherence that's quite critical to highlight too is just like light, with lasers, light basically not coherently focused does not generate the concentrated energy that makes a laser beam. So that's why a laser beam works the way it does, because it takes that disparate energy and gives it a very coherent, sharp focus, which actually makes a laser that can actually burn things, because it's such a powerful concentrated force. Same thing can be done to the energy of coherence and its criticality in wielding of theurgy or magic, if you would, too. To consolidate and condense and bring coherence into a sharp focus makes it more efficient for purposes of quantum matter alteration, for that matter. Anyhow, pardon my digression, back on target. So this right here will be a apophyllite, a lovely clear ray crystal of divinity that's luckily a very natural pyramidal shape, which is very nice, and a very, very lovely celestial gateway divine alignment of the higher chakras, of course. Then right here will be a very special master healer called Tibetan Black Quartz, seen right here. So Tibetan Black Quartz is part of the holy trinity of master healers of the Seraphonite as well as the Star Argonite that have the same function, except so of course this black included crystal comes from Tibet, a very, very lovely place in the earth of nearly unbroken spiritual discipline, as far as we have in recorded history, of impeccable Om resonance. And so what that means is that the natural imbuement of that frequency has a very powerful Om capacity that works as a very massively, powerfully healing, full light body activator in its own right, that stimulates dramatically the Earth star's expansion with the Soul star's up expansion. So this guy by itself generates quite the powerful toroidal field of full light body activation that, of course, inherently heals any patterns of dis-ease or stagnancies caught in the chakra column, manifesting as a dis-ease. So that's why those three work very fantastic together to be the quintessential holy trinity of master healing frequencies. Then right here would be the most stabilizing wind elemental frequency, named Holly Blue Agate. Even though it has a purple appearance, that's its trade name. So the aspect of stabilizing the 6th and 7th in the most impeccable fashion is of the essence. So Holly Blue agate's very rare. It only comes from one mine in northern Oregon, but luckily the Will of the Forest has a way of providing what I need for these ambitious constructs. But the aspect of the impeccable Holly Blue agate is the most stabilizing aspect of the wind, is the most stabilizing capacity of the higher perception, where it really truly shines, of course. And so I'll take a little break from the rest of these guys right here to discuss this concept. It's having the most stabilized formats of jasper and agates found in each of their elemental designation spectrum color resonances is of the essence for full equilibrium. So when you have the earth being stabilized by red jasper, you have the fire being stabilized by fire agate, as well as the moss green agate and blue lace agate stabilizing water, this guy stabilizes wind. So in a background ambitious dynamic mainframe, having the most stable elements, atomically speaking, of all four terrestrial elements is very advantageous for long-term equilibrium, which is the big goal of this guy too. I know sometimes I laugh because it's just very evident when I say it out loud, but anyhow, continuing on. So another very lovely violet ray dharmic accelerant right here is chaurite. Chaurite is an incredible violet ray, typical wind, 6th, 7th, 8th non-physical chakra activator, yet the inclusions of dendric and calcite make its own contained unit to ground this energy through the earth stars to increase divine intervention tangibility. And so why I consider that a fantastic dharmic accelerant is that obviously with that high frequency induction and its own grounding subroutine by itself, encouraging one's dharmic path into reality is very, very advantageous for the smoothing out the alchemical crucible, I guess you could say too, and be once again another alignment to one's divine dharmic appointed path through a crystalline resonance apparatus. Then right here is a lovely purple ray cousin to serpentine named Stitchtite. Stitchtite, just like serpentine, is a very powerful full Kundalini activator, but luckily a purple ray concentration encourages the Kundalini wholeness activation from a top-down perspective, which is very nice for, of course, emotional, psychological healing of patterns of stagnation that be impeding one's progression, so to speak, and also a very powerful psychic insulator in its own right as well. There's, of course, many aspects of intensive psychic insulation in this entire device that I've yet to fully really cover because my time is finite and it's already almost an hour of me talking to this phone about this ambitious stationary mainframe, so you get it. And that aspect, of course, brings the capstone continuity of the wind, which is very, very, very harmonious and healing to the entire energy body from top to bottom. And so, I will go ahead and discuss the common denominator of the 4 power packs now in one shot. So, with the aspects of earth, fire, water, and wind grounded to the transmutation to further ground and consolidate and compost all this excess energy, one of the other connection points that are quite critical for all 4 power packs to be in resonance as they run their ignition sequence would be that of love, which is obviously the most important element of the 5th element, technically, to be the only concentration not in moderation. So, right here would be the clear quartz to neutrally amplify and transfer the energy through this entire blade band, conjoining the 4 elements. Going into rose quartz, seen right here, a classic pink ray high heart crystal of love stimulation. Then, once again, a heavy concentration of golden healer quartz, the gold white light high heart source attunement frequency in combination with pink ray is what's been deemed the love shine ratio that's become its own very successful prolific weaponized love platform, as a joking way to put it. But yes, then going into kunzite, the lithium based pink ray high heart love soothing frequency. So this crystal right here is a very, very essential, powerful lithium-based love frequency that brings extreme calm and ease to the entire energy, nervous system, body in tandem. Hence, of course, lithium has been well notarized to be utilized for antipsychosis injections, for example, which is a bad example but relevant. So obviously having a lithium vibration through an entire structure brings innately a very calming nervous system stimulation. That's why I bring up that analogy in that capacity to give it relevant application. So then goes to clear quartz, then to rose quartz, and golden healer quartz, and kunzite and clear quartz, and so on, for the neutral acceleration of the extreme soothing love vibration being the common denominator at the widest radial lateral part of the apparatus to bring the dominant vibration of bringing love here to the earth through many different aspects of this vibrational and engineering endeavor. And speaking of lithium-based crystals, I did omit, since it's quite buried, of purple lepidolite found in the water power pack, which is another lithium-potassium-based crystal of extreme soothing to the emotional body as well as the nervous system. Sorry, I got a little blissed out from actually really doing a direct alignment. I'm all, oh, which may be pretty obvious to the viewing. But yes, this is a very powerful, soothing, loving vibration that works as a common denominator for the entire construct. And now we're making very good progress, and we're almost done here. So at the very apex lateral band right here will be an alteration of what's considered the Terra Nueva New Earth Portal ratio. That would be consisting of once again, the Moss Green Agate to stabilize the physical heart chakra. And this rendition up here actually has the ignition of root-related quartz to work as a massive accelerant, almost paradoxically, the most soothing alignment to source energy made manifest through the heart chakra's stabilized terrestrial format with the celestial influence. And this alteration has a concentration of the Larimar, once again, to bring extreme soothing goddess vibration, divine feminine energy to encourage one's truth. Then the golden healer quartz again, of course, to bring the source through the entire octave range. Then into the turquoise, once again, to increase the capacity of one's fifth chakra wholeness, to speak from the totality and be the totality of who they are in truth with creation. Not one that wants to, well, what would they, I'm getting a little tongue-tied here because I'm getting very sentimental. So the aspect of root-related quartz intensifies the energy going into moss green agate, to golden healer quartz, to Larimar, and so on, being a kind of a fifth chakra alteration, fifth chakra supporting alteration to the typical new earth portal stabilization of the heart chakra, as well as the celestial energy transfer through, which is very, very nice. And so, last but not least, would be the explanation of the two apex coins seen right here at the very top of the pyramid, which is a basic rainbow full spectrum stimulation with the aspects of the entire rainbow color spectrum of the 7 rays, plus a couple more exotics. Would be the aspect, of course, of, once again, the garnet, the root-related quartz to intensify from the root chakra activation into the carnelian for the sacrum activation, golden healer quartz into the source activation, into tiger's eye, into root-related quartz, into peridot, a fantastic third and fourth chakra stimulant of growth, how all this is possible. Then the aspect of the golden healer quartz, then the emerald, then the aquamarine, the lapis, the amethyst, all things I've described before in great detail at this point. Then the hemimorphite is another fantastic heart-mind coherence stimulant. And that would be almost it for this guy. Then the root-related quartz, then the rose quartz right here to complete the sequence. So both of these sides have been put on a brass for projection yang, as well as a silver for intake yin, of the exact same crystalline composition on both sides of the lovely coin, commissioned to existence by lovely wizard of Sedona, Mr. Stephen A. Ross, as part of these amazing proliferation of these magic augmented coins. And I completely goofed in something rather insanely critical, speaking of heart-mind coherence, better late than never, would be the inclusion buried under here. It's so well concealed because I didn't want to run away, obviously. I forgot about it for a dissertation. And obviously I've done a pretty good job keeping this straight to this point. So right here would be tanzanite, which is a very impeccable heart-mind coherence stimulant of wind elemental spectrum of a indigo blue ray appearance. Hard to see in this video, but there it is. So tanzanite is, in my opinion, bar none, the most effective heart-mind coherence stimulant between the aspects of the perfect 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th, and 4th chakra stimulant. It makes the perfect alignment of heart-mind coherence pathway configuration, which is, of course, one of those extremely advantageous dispositions for a spiritual adept that is of the essence for impeccable quantum perception, coherence, and manifestation of one's Akashic record knowledge, basically, made conscious. The original internet, if you would, or the original AI, as it's become quite in vogue these days. So, my goodness, I believe that actually would be it for this entire crystalline disposition after an hour and 4 minutes. Good grief. So, as a closing remarks, capstone summary. Like mentioned, this is quite the ambitious dynamics stationary mainframe with a very versatile crystal ignition order that's developed to be piloted and purified on an incandescent bulb on a salt lamp pyramid. Very nice. And most importantly, I'll circle back to this once again, full circle moment, is to take this entire exotic crystalline range that's been calibrated together as a collective of various organs of this crystalline entity, to say it once more, and to firmly ground that into a space which conjoins all of the outlets into a copper rod into the earth is the most important aspect. So with this diverse crystalline composition, having it being purified, charged to peak efficiency with the salt lamp being illuminated to heat it up, runs this entire frequency in equilibrium and dynamic range through an entire space to make the tangible containment field as a summary. Well, I do believe that would finally be it. Well, 1,000 blessings, and may the force be with us all.